they're playing. Are they regional games? Is your student going to be on a bus for 3 hours to go and play at school, or are they going to have to miss and spend the night and come back? How much travel is going to be involved in that particular sport? And then this is something that is heavily discussed in our offices, and that is their major and their career path. So for a student athlete that has a deep desire to be an architect or to be a nurse or an engineer, going the student athlete route may be tricky for them. It can be tricky at a large university where all of those majors are offered and they can sign up for nursing or engineering or architecture. However, those are very time-consuming majors. And will the student athlete be able to devote the time necessary in the classroom as well as the time expected on the field? And of course, many of these schools will provide mandatory tutoring hours and perhaps peer tutors and assistants, but it can't replace the actual time spent in a lab or in a studio or in the library just studying. So the major can be a really big factor. It can be a major factor on the other sense. These smaller schools that come to your student and say, we want you, come here, come play for us. And your student says, they want me, I want to go. But your student also wants to be a nurse and they don't have a nursing program. Or your student wants to be an engineer and they don't offer engineering classes. So there has to be a balance there between finding the right fit in a college or university based on what their academic interest is and what their athletic ability and the right fit with that school. So if there's any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me at the end of this. Thank you.
All right, so we've gotten a pretty good expectation and understanding of what the academic side of college athletics is like. What we want to start turning our attention to before we have our panel and have our discussion is what other resources we have here at LCA and what we try to do with our resources in the athletics department to help you and your student athlete in this process. And to do that, nobody would like for me to stand up here and talk more, so Kirby Willoughby, our assistant athletic director, will do so.
Okay, so I'm just going to go through a quick, brief summary of some of the resources we have in our athletic department that we want you all to be aware of, that you all can use as you go through this process. I think first and foremost, obviously our staff. We have 5 full-time staff members, and we have all been through this process at different levels. We've had to think through all of these scenarios in all sorts of ways, both as players and coaches. And so we just want you to know that we want to help you all in this process and make it as easy and clear as possible for you all. So that was the first one. The second one is our coaches, our head coaches and our staff and our assistant coaches. They really do want to help walk alongside you all in this process. Obviously, where the child goes and where your athlete goes is really dependent ultimately on their ability to play. But we really want to walk alongside our student athletes as coaches and staff to provide guidance and direction and to kind of talk through scenarios and the level with which is a reasonable expectation of where they can go, where they can contribute, and what that looks like for them individually, and it looks different for everyone. And so we really just want you to know that we are here and our coaches are here to help you all and to answer questions that you may have. The third thing that we have kind of recently created is on our athletic website, we can create a link that can provide video for your child for a highlight film or special practice sessions or things that college coaches want to see. So if our contests are broadcasted by PrepSpin, if it's conducive to that, we have that game footage available that we can look at and find some highlight films. Our coaches also use, most of our coaches use a software called Huddle, which can record the games and practices. So it makes it really easy to go in there and click and select the highlights that you like. So our coaches are able to create an account for those athletes that want that and can kind of help walk them through that of, hey, I like this shot that I took or this play that I made. And so it's very easy to do that. And you can kind of create a highlight film to use. that we can put on our athletic website underneath their bio on the roster, that you can click on it and it'll go to those highlights, which is a neat feature that I didn't have when I played, and that would have been really nice to have. Also, if you have footage or highlight film that you have done on your own, that you've done on different games or club AAU teams, that kind of thing, we can probably figure out a way to incorporate all of those things into that link that we can send out to coaches that you can have access to. Along with that, we have kind of created a recruiting questionnaire that's kind of a broad spectrum questionnaire on our website that gives basic information like player bio, athletic info, academic info, those things that you would see on a recruiting questionnaire at the college level. We have created kind of our own form for that. So if you go to our website, go lcaeagles.com, you can select on that college recruiting tab, and on the bottom of that there's a recruiting questionnaire that has information. Once you fill that form out, and we'll submit it to our department, and then we can help use that information along with that link that you use, that we put that film and that highlight video stuff together and kind of incorporate it into one thing that you all can send out to coaches that you may, or schools that may be interested in. In order to provide that information, though, we do have to have kind of a waiver that says you all are allowing us to use information. So in your folder, there is a waiver that a guardian does have to sign and get back to our athletic department, just so that when you do fill that out online, it does go directly to us, but that waiver we also have to have so we can use that information with that link, if that makes sense. So we really hope that some of these resources that we have put in will really be helpful to you all, and that you know that as a department and as a staff and coaches that we really want to help every way we can to make this process smoother and a little bit easier for you all. So.
All right, thank you, Kirby, and thank you for playing injured tonight, because not only is she pregnant, she's also not feeling very well tonight. So appreciate you doing that. What I would like to do now is start getting into our panel discussion. Now that you've heard a little bit about the academics and you know a little bit about what LCA has to offer, I want to bring, first of all, I want to bring Heather back up here. If you can, Heather can have a seat, as I mentioned, as Assistant AD for Academics and Eligibility at the UK. We have her here. Drew Schott. Drew, only a couple of years ago, sat in this chapel every week as a student. But since his graduation from LCA in 2015, Drew's been a student athlete at Center College in Danville. He's an alum who recently went through this process, he and his family both. We felt Drew could share valuable perspectives to our families about the process and the decision he and his family made. We also have Tim O'Neill, Mr. Tim O'Neill, who's a Major League scout with the Minnesota Twins. Tim's been a scout for the Twins organization for nearly 22 years. He played first base and outfield for Gonzaga. Can I tell the years? No. All right, so 1985 to 87. Oh, did you say? No, I'm sorry. Upon graduation, he had a stint as coaching at his alma mater, then moved into the high school coaching ranks before he accepted his current position in '95. He's from California, moved to Lexington, which was supposed to be a short stop, and 22 years later, he's still here. Tim's known to a number of you in here as he's been very active in youth sports, youth baseball specifically. He's got a great heart for assisting youths in evaluating talent, but also mentoring young people. And finally, we have Dr. Holly Sheely. She is the Vice President for Athletics at Transylvania University. She holds degrees from Asbury, Eastern Kentucky, and a PhD from U of L, but don't hold that against her. She is in her third year as the Director of Athletics and recently promoted to Vice President of Athletics. She was named that in July 1 of 2013. She became the first woman to serve in the role at Transy and only the third female Director of Athletics in Kentucky. She's responsible for 24 NCAA-sponsored sports, plus equestrian, cheer, and dance teams. And prior to Transy, she was Assistant Director of Championships at the NCAA. And prior to coming to the NCAA, she served as Assistant Director for Student Development and Championships at the University of Louisville. So, welcome to this panel, Dr. Sheely, Tim O'Neill, Drew Schott, and Heather McAtee. So thank you all very much for being here. What I'd like to do first is open it up for questions from the audience. You certainly have to have questions because I know we get them all the time. Please feel free to jump up and raise your hand. Do you have questions for our panel that are just burning inside of you? Yes.
The contact age of grade, just so when we're contacted, we want to make sure that we're not violating any rules because of what grade our children are in.
I believe that would be a Heather question. Okay.
And is it different between NCAA and NAIA?
Just
All right, I can answer the NCAA part. As far as you reaching out to coaches, you can do that at any point in time. If you wanted to call them, if you wanted to email them, that is absolutely fine. If you want to text them, that is fine. There are going to be times where they cannot respond back to you. So if you call and you do not get a coach on the phone and they don't return your call, they may not be being rude. They may not be able to do that. The rules are constantly changing. At this point in time for most sports, junior year and beyond, coaches can call and text unlimited. Same thing with emailing. Some sports do have some different, I'm not going to get into all the different ones, but they are getting a little more liberal about returning phone calls, and they are realizing that texting is how most young people communicate, so they are making that a little bit more permissible. It's not, I guess it's not like a quarter each text like it used to be, so it's not a cost to the student to receive that. Does that answer a little bit?
No, that's the opposite. Them reaching out.
Them reaching out to you. Okay, it's most likely going to be July 1st of the junior year is
but
when
is there where they can't?
Where they can't?
Yes.
Before your junior
Yes.
year. Before your junior year. What I usually like to tell people is if you really want to come face-to-face with coaches before they can contact you, a very good way is to find out when their sport camps are. You can contact them, you can talk with them, you can have face-to-face contact. It doesn't count as anything extra. So if you have a school that you're really interested in talking to a coach and having them see how you perform to see your skills, I would look and see when their sport camps are.
I don't believe
That's not what I'm at. I'll use the example. Last year at national championships, I had a D1 coach approach my son, who was in 7th grade. So we didn't talk to him because that didn't seem appropriate. Is there a time that a certain grade they have to be at? Because we don't want then that to come back later to disqualify his eligibility because he was talking to somebody before he was allowed to.
For Division I, most of those rules start at the beginning of high school. However, basketball does have a rule. 7th grade is where they would start not being able to contact students. So if it's not basketball, the beginning of high school is when you would be considered a prospect. But there was a UK basketball coach that kind of changed the basketball rules to 7th grade.
Thank you.
I don't think you'd have anything to worry about if a coach ran across you, your son, during a summer event and talked to him. I don't think it's going to jeopardize your eligibility down the road. I haven't heard that.
And the second question, I know if you could do this, is when they compete in road racing, things of that nature, and then the prize is cash, we don't take it, but we don't know what the cap is on that. We've also seen where they've run prior to going to college in road races that they lose eligibility even though they didn't take anything. So what do we need to be careful on those?
Yeah, that once again, that's going to be a little more challenging because you can't accept up to your actual necessary expenses. You're going to have to keep track of that. So if your expenses to get somewhere is $50 and you take a $200 cash prize, you're probably going to run into an issue. It's probably smart just to turn down any cash prize. Medals, plaques, those kind of things, we haven't seen very much issue with that. But the rule is prior to enrollment, up into actual necessary cash. If you're going to do that, I would just keep track of your expenses.
Yep.
All right. Other questions? Other questions? All right, I have a couple prepared here because I anticipated this. Drew, I would really like to have you spend a moment talking about your story of your process here. Drew played basketball and baseball here at LCA and played soccer for a game, and but didn't get recruited in soccer. But you had an interesting story where you decided you were trying to make a decision between where you wanted to go and what options you had. Could you share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So my senior year of high school, God willing, I was very healthy and had some talents that he let me use on the baseball field. And I had a couple options of schools that I could have gone to. Some ranging from low-end Division I schools to D2 all the way down to D3 where I ended up. And I think today, the biggest problem I see with looking at kids that I either played with that now are into colleges or coming up behind me is a lot of athletes nowadays get really caught up in the Division I title. A lot of kids see that, and that's attributed to a lot of things, whether it be social media or things like that, where this whole very hyped up, you know, I committed to a Division I school, I'm a Division I athlete. In retrospect, which I've had to learn, when I did commit to Center, which is a Division III school, it was not the most illustrious college of choice, especially for the baseball program that was kind of struggling before I came into it. But I think for me it's been the perfect fit. I've got the opportunity to play right away, which I think is severely overlooked when kids are looking colleges. There was definitely some schools that I could have gone to right out of high school that would have looked great, you know, big Division I schools, but I probably would have sat on the bench to my junior or senior year and then probably played a minimal amount of time. And so I think from that stance, you've got to kind of look with your child, or you yourself have to look at what are you trying to get out of your talents. If you're trying to take it to the farthest level you can, you know, if you have that dream of being on a big Division I school, then chase that. If you want to actually play another 4 years of school, that's another thing that you really need to contribute into. So I think from that standpoint, it's good to look at what you're actually getting out of the program, whether it's the title or the opportunity to continue to play. So from that, I think that was definitely the biggest thing that I learned. Because I have a couple buddies and stuff that, you know, I played with, and they committed to these big schools and now are either transferring out because they don't see any prospect of them playing in the next few years, or just kind of giving up their passion of the game, either, you know, dropped off the team or just been very content with just kind of being you know, a bench player or just very little contribution to the team.
That's when he's told me that story, and I've known Drew for a number of years, it was very impactful to me to hear about it from the student themselves about what really means the most to them now. And Tim, if you don't mind, could you piggyback on that, because you obviously are, as a Major League Baseball scout, you come across people, you know, kids of all different kinds of levels who are making decisions sometimes between pro sport or pro baseball. You know, do I get drafted? Do I not get drafted? Do I go to college? Do I don't go to college? What kind of mindset do you see from kids as far as how they're making their decisions that might be helpful to families who are trying to discern what their kids are going to do?
That was pretty mature, pretty impressive kid I've known since he was about 5. That's a pretty cool story. It kind of ties into what I wanted to talk about a little bit, and I think as parents, most of you going through it for the first time, maybe not. It's a unique deal. It's none of you or myself are experts at getting recruited or selecting colleges. It's not something you do on a daily basis. So it can become very difficult. It can be confusing. We don't have perspective. Some people do. And I think in a nutshell, it comes down to finding the right fit for your son academically, socially, athletically, and financially. Now we can easily come up with what I can afford, what we can afford. We can easily come up with what kind of grades do I have, and what do I qualify for, which school can I get into. Socially, some kids, Center College is a lot different than Ole Miss on a lot of different fronts. Some kids aren't prepared for Ole Miss. Okay, but we can determine those things very easily. The hardest thing to do is determine what level you fit at athletically. And really, it's the Bernie Sanders rule, the 1/10 of 1%, that guy, if that's your son, don't worry about it. Okay, that's Austin Kearns, and that's Chaz Rowe, and those guys are first rounders, or they're premium volleyball players, or they're going to LSU. Don't worry, if that's your son or daughter, don't worry about it. Then there's the D1, the legitimate D1 guys. I'm trying to think out of here. LCA is Chris Wade, Robbie. I'd even throw in the premium guy, whatever. Those are legitimate Division I guys. Those guys are already recruited, signed. They're signing in the 9th and 10th grade, thanks to her buddy over there recruiting 7th graders. Baseball's the same way. They're recruiting. Vanderbilt has 11 2020 signs. Think about that. They got 11 9th graders. So if you're a parent of a junior or a sophomore and those schools aren't recruiting you right now, you're probably not that type of player. But what that does tell everybody else kind of fits in the next group, and he was one of them. I saw him play a lot. He could have played at many Division I schools. And his explanation of why he didn't, that was awesome. That is very unique. Most kids get so caught up in the Division I or bust, D1 or bust. And I'm gonna tell you, I played at a smaller, so I played at Gonzaga, and it wasn't the SEC or the ACC. It was awesome. It was the funnest 4 years of my life. And these 4 years that he has at center are probably gonna be, you're gonna remember him forever. So when if I can just give you one piece of advice, it'd be to be realistic with the expectations of how good your son is. We all think our son or daughter is better than they really are. Okay, you need to get some advice. You need to get some. Coach Galloway, I saw in here earlier. He's been around a long time. You need to rely on some resources that you know to steer you in the right direction. And I truly believe the best way to get hooked up in college, and I'm going to interject one thing. The thing that bothers me most about this generation, it's the be recruited generation. We all want to be recruited, right? We pay people to, the public or the services, right? Recruit my kid, recruit my kid. That's not, I think we're missing the point. You need to recruit the school. You need to determine what fits for you. Center College was a perfect fit for him. Go to their camps. Whether it's basketball is different, volleyball, soccer, baseball, softball. They recruit out of their camps more than anything. Put a video together, your service on your website, that's awesome. Put a little video together. I'm going to Moorhead State's camp. He's the coach. I send him, I email him my video. I tell him I'm interested in playing for you. I qualify academically. I really want to be a Moorhead Eagle. And I go to their camp. And if they don't recruit you, you're probably going to come down into the D2s and the NAIAs. Okay, but start wherever you think you fit. Go to those camps. If you don't get recruited, just kind of slide down and try to find the right fit for you. Yeah, true.
I just kind of want to piggyback on what Mr. O'Neill was saying about the recruiting process is so much more of a self-push thing that a lot of people kind of overlook in this. Like he was saying, unless your child or you yourself are going to be, highly recruited Division I athlete, most of the time the way to get in contact with schools is by you yourself doing it. And I wish I would have kind of known that a little bit earlier on, and that was something I kind of had to learn through the process. But the biggest thing for me was just getting on and, I typed up, I think it was my junior year, I typed up an email that, had my transcript with it. It had, some of my stats, it had a video connected to, of my talents or whatever. And then what I did was narrow down about 10 schools that I was really interested that met, socially, academically, and just places that I thought I would actually be interested in going. And just kind of shot that email out to the head coaches, like, hey, I'm interested. Is there any possible recruiting events that you all have going on that I back, you come participate in. You know, you look at your camps and just kind of you being the one to go talk to them, because the way it is there's so many players in so many sports, and the coaches are so limited in where they can go with their time, that you've got to kind of go out and grasp their time with them. You've got to go out and be the ones to initiate contact with them to get their attention. And there's also a way of overdoing it. You don't want to be constantly filling up one coach's email box to the point that he gets annoyed with your name, but it's definitely something that you have to push for yourself, and you have to get the schools to kind of recruit you first. I know with me, with center, I sent an email to their head coach, and then the next weekend he came out and watched me play, and that was it from then. I mean, that kind of, you know, let him see me, kind of got me a spot on the team, and you know, it's been a good fit since then. So I really go about that is that it's more of you help the schools recruit you instead of just sitting back and kind of like waiting for these letters to come in, because unless you're that, like you said, the top of that 1%, it's not going to happen that way. So,
Holly, if you don't mind, can you, sorry. Holly, you've been at different levels of the NCAA, and you've seen this, and you obviously preside over a Division III institution at the moment in the athletics program. Have you seen families making the quote-unquote wrong choices, and see the kids not fit versus the kids that fit? I mean, are the things that families make a mistake at the beginning that you have seen in your experience?
Yeah, I would say, you know, I agree with what's being said here, but I also think it really comes down to, regardless of what division, NAIA, NCAA, what are the goals for your student? And when you look at those goals for your student, I think Drew said, you know, he could have played Division I. He chose a more selective institution and center, and perhaps his goals are different, and he even mentioned some of those. But I really think that's important. I mean, and I'm sure you would probably agree to this, there's plenty of people when I was at the University of Louisville who were unhappy student athletes. And I'm sure that's true of Kentucky, and there were plenty who were happy. But I think it comes down to what are your expectations and what are your goals about going to that school. And I think the comments about going to their camps is definitely on point. I think it's also worth going to watch them coach at the game, because how they coach in a game is how they'll coach your child. That's how they'll typically be in practice. There's very few that have that ability to turn on a different face from game to practice.
Great.
And I would just like to note that Nate Valentine is a Transy grad, so if you have any questions about Transy, you can hit him up for that.
We have a question back here, Cliff.
Yeah, this is for Heather. For the 16 core courses, the 2 years of social science, what qualifies under the NCAA's definition of social science? Maybe Katie could say, I mean, I know economics and government would be there, but what else?
Yeah, but every school submits a list of core courses that they would like to be approved. So it's going to be different for every school, but it's more of your U.S. histories, your world histories, economics, government. Those are the ones that are the social science. Psychology, sociology, those are all the social science courses that the NCAA will look at for approving. Am I missing any that you guys offer?
No, every year we update, so if there's a course that comes in for just a year or two, like we had Introduction to Philosophy 1 year, and so we put it forth and they take a look at the syllabus and see if it would be approved.
But the history's qualified.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions? Yes, Kevin.
What is I hear kids that are verbally committing, and he said that like Vandy had 11, 20, 20 commits. What's verbally committing? Then you have the national letter of intent, and if you're verbally committed to school A, can the school change their mind, you change your mind, everybody change their mind up till?
I'll go ahead and take this one, and if anyone has anything to add. A verbal commitment is made by a student. A lot of times it's just that. It can change day to day depending on what they tweet. So a verbal commitment, and sometimes the school will say, yep, you know, we offer you a scholarship. So it's kind of this informal agreement. The national letter of intent, which the signing was started last Wednesday for most sports and ends this Wednesday for the earlier period, that is a written agreement. By signing a national letter of intent, the student is vowing to go to school for at least a year at that institution, and the institution is going to give a scholarship to them for at least a year. So for all these people that have these early commitments, it's not binding, and it's getting earlier and earlier, especially in the female sports. The female sports, freshman, sophomore year. I mean, I work with gymnastics a lot. They're little when they come in. It looks like they're shouldn't even be on our campus yet. But it's just something that is more or less an informal agreement. But you can tell that's probably where they're leaning towards that day. Once again, this younger generation can change their mind very easily. So it might just be what goes out that tweet.
Yeah, so you don't sign your letter of intent till the fall of your senior year in high school. So these guys that are signing, I'll give you just a quick one. A school, I won't name them, down in Baton Rouge, for instance.
Baton Rouge Junior College?
I'm going to throw out just a random number. They've signed 20 guys to 2019, or they verbally commit 20 guys. That's all it is a handshake. Those 20 guys, 10 of them will develop and turn into the players they thought, and they'll end up showing up at LSU. And the other 10 who go backwards, either athletically, socially, academically, they'll run from the kid. So it's a horrible business. It truly is.
You don't have anything to add there?
Terry?
Yes, Cliff.
Heather made the comment about the fact that the school is basically guaranteeing for a one-year scholarship. Can you elaborate on the fact that a scholarship is not necessarily a 4-year commitment for the school?
Yes, and it's changed a little bit in Division I. It is a year agreement, usually year to year. So just like an academic scholarship, you have to have certain criteria in order to have it renewed. For an athletic scholarship, it's somewhat the same. Division I has eliminated the athletic requirement of our athletic scholarships, as silly as that sounds. So in Division I, if you get a scholarship, you cannot be renewed for athletic reasons. So if you don't perform, if you get hurt, that can't be the reason that your scholarship is not renewed. If you're not academically eligible, if you rob a bank, if you do something on campus, your scholarship then can be non-renewed. But the NCAA has made it a little bit harder for us to use the academic part as part of the judgment for the renewal of the scholarship. We are allowed to also offer multi-year scholarships, so there is an opportunity. A coach may come in and say, we're going to offer you a 4-year scholarship. That's up to the coach whether or not they decide to do that. The renewal period then would not really occur. If they have a year-to-year, you would still be, there would be some criteria for you to be able to renew it.
Could you, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Darren.
I guess I'll address Dr. Shealy, but I'm not exactly sure. But my understanding, the only reason I'm here, and I'm kind of still in shock that I've got a daughter, and what I've always heard, what I've been hearing recently is a lot of times at the smaller schools, the Division III, the NAIA level, a lot of them make determinations on female athletes much earlier. Of course, the academic has to be there.